to attend our panel session on new GIS service models for higher education. We also appreciate the next slide, please. Angie. Yes, we appreciate the support from the GISS specialty group and the Geography Education Specialty Group that are sponsoring this session. Hi, I'm Dave Cowen. I'm a 54-year member of the AAG, and I created one of the first academic GIS programs at the University of South Carolina in the mid-70s. Even though I've been retired for 14 years, I remain very active as a consultant to Esri on issues of importance to the higher education community. As customer number 007, I have a long history with Esri, and I initiated the Esri University Site License Program, which we'll talk a little bit about today. In my current capacity, I work closely with Angela Lee from the education team, who has helped organize this session. So thank you, Angie, for participating in this. Over the past couple of years, we've undertaken an in-depth analysis of how GIS services are being provided in colleges and universities. As part of this analysis, we've identified some exciting programs and trends. Therefore, we've decided to convene a panel of experts to share their experiences. Now, these include Emma Slayton and Jessica Brenner from Carnegie Mellon. We're excited to hear from them. Alicia Coward from the University of Colorado, Denver. Thank you for getting up this morning, Alicia. And Patricia Carvajales Dale from Clemson University, my rival up in the upstate. So we're going to, so it's sort of an interesting point. Part of the discussion today is that Patricia, Emma, and Jessica are at universities that do not have geography departments. So the procedure here will be, I will start the discussion by highlighting some of the trends that I've identified. The panelists will then provide short discussion of their programs. We should have plenty of time for a question and answer from the audience. Next slide, please, Angie. Okay, a couple of years ago, I was given a task to report to Esri management on the role of that libraries are playing in the provision of GIS services on college campuses. My analysis led to some initial white papers and also a publication, The Evolution of GIS Services in Academic Libraries. There's a URL for that where you could obtain that, a copy of that if you wanted to. Subsequently, the Esri Education, Learn, and Story Maps teams thought it would be useful to extend the project to the academic community. To aid in this endeavor, we've created a steering committee of experts at 10 major universities to better understand the issues and to develop the resources to aid this community. Our current initiative is to create a story map book with the same title as this session. A prototype of this book, I converted my article to a, so this is a capture of the story map chapter that I've created. There's a URL where you could go enter that. So with Alan's help, we put together a prototype of a chapter for the larger book. Next, Angie. In this publication, I argue that the decision to add GIS services by a library follows Everett Rogers' classic model for the diffusion of innovation. Using this model, I argue that there's been a steady three-decade progression from initial innovator and early adoption to the final conversion of the laggards in this model. In this adoption process, there are a number of change agents. Next, Angie. I won't go into depth about these. I'll highlight maybe three things. I argue that these include advancements in hardware and software that have made GIS much more accessible to people, but also the policies of the federal government to share data have been significant. And it's also clear to me that Esri's site license program had a profound impact on the library community. Under this program, software and data became available across the campus. And in fact, in many cases, the library seized the opportunity to become the focal point for the administration and training of GIS. In terms of the adoption curve, it is important to highlight, next, Angie. In terms of the adoption process, it's important to highlight the American Research Library's 1992 GIS literacy program that was sponsored by Esri and other vendors and some universities. Basically, ArcView and Tiger Files provided a simple to use software on inexpensive Windows machines. So this made things possible. Next. There's so much activity that by 2015, Ann Holstein, who did a wonderful survey of what was going on in libraries, said that libraries have become bustling geospatial centers. Next. I did a survey a couple of years ago, and we tried to look at libraries and whether they had mission statements about what kind of support. So I thought this is kind of interesting. One mission statement at the Indiana University: interdisciplinary GIS education, data discovery and literacy. And at Arizona State, it's kind of neat thing: we tell stories with maps and data. You like that, Alan? Okay, next. Recently, I conducted an analysis of libraries that offer GIS support. So Angie provided me with a list of all of the institutions of higher education, and I went through them kind of tediously. And one of the interesting findings is I think 130 of 131 Carnegie One research universities have an Esri site license. And I started going through them. I went to every website. And so there are at least 180 universities where there's GIS support being provided in the library. Next. So I sort of argue that there's a maturity model. There are examples of what we might call a three-stage maturity model, where we have exploration, where there's just simple links to resources, exploitation stage, where there's some level of support. Somebody comes into the library, they're going to get some face-to-face help. And then sort of the enterprise stage, where there's full-fledged services working that would include workshops, consultations, and other things. So nice. Next, Angie. Okay, so let me conclude my comments here. Libraries represent maybe the best choice for expanding GIS use on campus. The diffusion of innovation model seems to fit. Story maps provide a very simple way for the laggards, for those universities whose librarians are a little timid for taking a deep dive into GIS. It provides sort of the gateway app, right? So story maps has made a profound impact. The maturity model seems to fit, and the challenge would be that there needs to be serious research, and we need to recruit new audiences, which is a great segue